Welcome to Windsor Teachers. This session we're talking Latin language, specifically back to basics with subjects and objects. What are they? How are they used? What do they look like? All of that stuff. So first of all, it's useless talking about subjects and objects unless we first talk about transitive and intransitive verbs first of all. So a transitive verb only makes sense if it has another object to exert its action onto. So for instance, the girl wants the dog. If you didn't have the dog in that sentence, you'd be thinking, well, the girl wants what? There needs to be something else in that sentence, and that something else is the dog, the object. The verb doesn't make sense unless there is something that is the object of the verb. And so intransitive is the opposite of that. An intransitive verb will still make sense if there is no object to exert the action onto. So for instance, the dog walks. This is a perfectly complete sentence in and of itself. If you say the dog walks, yeah, it perhaps doesn't flow very well in organic conversation, but no one is thinking, well, where does the dog walk? All of this stuff. The dog walks by itself is a perfectly complete sentence. No object of the verb is required. This sentence makes sense with just the subject and the verb. So let's look at some other examples. So the pirates found the treasure. So here is our verb, and it is transitive, which means that the treasure is the object that is required in order to complete that sentence. If you just said the pirates found, the listener would be going, well, found what? Where? When? How? And so the treasure completes that sentence. Let's look at this one. The pirates laughed. So our verb laughed, this is intransitive, and therefore it requires no object. That sentence, the pirates laughed, is complete in and of itself. So in Latin, most of the verbs we need to know are transitive, with the exception of a few. This means that most sentences will require someone or something doing the action and someone or something having the action done to them. So let's look at examples. So the girl loves the dog. So we've got the girl, she's performing the action, she's doing the action, she's doing the loving. So our verb is loves, and our object is the dog. The dog is having the action done to it. The dog is being loved. So the girl is the subject and the dog is the object. Loves is the verb. So let's have a look at this in a little bit more detail. So the girl we decided was the subject, loves the object, and the dog is the object. So subject, verb, and object like this. If we were to change this now into Latin, puella carnem amant, we would still have the subject, puella, the girl, which is the subject. We would have amat, which is the verb, and we would have carnem, the dog, which is still the object. One thing of note, though, is that the word order has changed around. We've gone from subject, verb, and then object in English to subject, object, then verb for a simple sentence in Latin. So one thing that is worth noting is that the object and the verb switch positions in that case. Let's summarize what we already know. We know the word order in English will go subject first, then the verb, between the subject and the object last. Whereas in Latin, the same simple sentence would read with the subject first, the object next, and then the verb last. So let's think about this sentence a little bit more. So we've got our subject, we've got our verb, we've got our object in the middle. Now, in Latin linguistic terms, if something is the subject, that means that it is in the nominative case. If it is the object of the sentence, that means it is in the accusative case. Okay, so let's review what we have been told so far in this video. So if you want to pause the video and have a go at finding the definition for each of these key words, please. Unfortunately, it isn't quite that simple because we know in Latin that there is not only a case system, but all nouns are also divided up into groups called declensions. The reason for that is because Latin is what's called an inflective language, which means that the endings of the words are going to change depending on how they are used in the sentence. So the three main declensions that we're going to definitely need to know. So the first, second, and third, very originally named. Let's just do singular for now. So let's say we're using the word puella, meaning girl, for the first declension. If there's one of her and she is the subject of the sentence, we're going to say puella. If there's one of her and she is the object of the sentence, she having the action performed on her, we would say puellam. In the second declension, let's say we're using the word dominus, meaning master. If there's one of him and he's performing the action, we would say dominus. If he's having the action performed on him and he is singular, we would say dominum. Finally, let's look at the third declension. Now, third declension is a little bit funky, but let's say we're using mercator, meaning the merchant. Also where we get the English word mercantile. So we're talking about a merchant, there's one of him, he's performing the action, he's the subject. In the nominative case, we're going to say mercator. In the third declension, in the accusative singular, he's having the action done to him, he is now a mercatorem. Okay, so those are the ways that the nominative and accusative looks in the singular in the first, second, and third declensions. Now let's practice. So for this task, what I'd like you to do is you're going to look at each of these sentences. You're going to decide, according to the context, which of these words in the brackets on the right will go into that gap. Another part of that task is you're also going to translate the sentence. All of these words are basic that we will have seen already. Please give that a go. Thank you very much for listening, ladies and gentlemen. This has been Mr. Windsor Teaches the Classics Latin Language.